Okay, it's time for our box office top 10, brought to you in association with all our friends at ComScore Movies. Whenever we need a top 10, we turn to our friends there at ComScore, Mr. and Mrs. ComScore, and they go, here's a top 10, and we say thank you very much indeed.
Yes.
And number 22, The Idea of You.
Worth pointing out that it's down there because obviously it was essentially a download streaming release, so it did have some theatricals. I actually quite enjoyed it. I thought it was much better than I expected it to be, and I do like Anne Hathaway, and I think the central idea of a film which says, why is there a problem with somebody, an older woman going out with a younger man when we're all completely fine with it the other way round?
On that subject, Lucy in London, I enjoyed listening to two men discussing The Idea of You. Yours sounded like a decent take on the film, Simon's heckle of annoying notwithstanding, and I assumed therefore that it would be a predictable, schmaltzy yet inoffensive time pass, and then I watched it. For sure, the setup is clunky and there are enough rom-com cliches in the first half to make you wonder why the two leads signed up. What I hadn't expected was how seen this film made me feel and how much it would move me. I, too, am a woman in midlife. I ended my marriage 2 years ago after some nonsense came to light, and I am currently having a beautiful time with a man 12 years younger than me. Despite, although I would say because of the age gap, my friend has opened up my world. They even introduced me to your podcast, and he has helped me take the risk to be vulnerable and love again. Yes, the film can be trite. Yes, the ending is basically Pretty Woman for the Gen Z folk. And yes, the good people of Scarborough might want to have a word with the scriptwriter. And it's a shame that in 2024, we must regard a film as brave just because it depicts an older woman and a younger man relationship. But I love that the film shows older women as successful yet goofy and scared to love again yet passionate and desirable. Although I guess it helps if you look like Anne Hathaway, which, just to be clear, I don't. But even I am having fun. It seems to me that the sign of a good film is that it creates the space for you to find something of yourself there. So thank you for reviewing a rom-com that finally midlife women can relate to. Lucy in London. Okay, Lucy, thank you very much.
Fantastic. Lovely email. Can I just say on the subject of the end of The Idea of You is much better than the end of Pretty Woman. I know they're both compromised. The Pretty Woman end was completely redone in order to give it a happy end. I actually think that the end of The Idea of You is a much cleverer take on that, and I think it works much better.
Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is at number 10 here, and in America we don't need to talk about that.
Yeah.
Number 9, Godzilla Kong, The New Empire.
It's, like I said, big crashy smashy monsters hitting things, but so much more was needed to make this into an interesting film. It is just a spectacle. That is all it is.
Number 8 is Love Lies Bleeding. Now, just before I read out, they've got an email from Peter in Brussels, which I'll get to in just a moment.
Okay.
Last week, when you were talking about Love Lies Bleeding, we were also talking about Baby Reindeer, yes?
Yeah.
So I noticed that on one particular type of social media, I had just been followed by Veronica Tafilska. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. I wonder who she is. And then I looked her up, and she is the co-writer of Love Lies Bleeding, and she is the director of Baby Reindeer. So if ever there was a woman whose time was now, it's her. That's incredible. So Baby Reindeer, that's her. Love Lies Bleeding, that's her as well. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's called being of the moment, isn't it? I loved Love Lies Bleeding. I think it's just... I'm a huge fan of Rose Glass, and I really, I love Saint Maud. But in the case of this, I just thought it was muscular and it was passionate and it kind of had a sense of its own outrageousness. It was bold enough. It's so great to see a filmmaker on their second feature have this much confidence, the confidence to do, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman jokes, to make a film which is so fleshy and so kind of Cronenbergian, and it really is one of those things that it kind of reaches off the screen and grabs at your innards. I thought it was just fantastic.
A couple of notes on that. Peter in Brussels at a recent BIFF, which is the Brussels International Fantastic Film Festival, where Rose Glass's Love Lies Bleeding was shown to an audience that jumped on the occasion to see it. Since it apparently won't be distributed by A24 in my country. Many queer, predominantly lesbian people attended the event together in the hope that it would be a celebration of queerness and an occasion for them to rejoice and celebrate the kind of representation they crave for. Everything turned sour as soon as the projection began, when a sizable group of people, predominantly male and middle-aged, started purposefully shouting rude, sexist and homophobic abuse and jokes, in inverted commas, at the screen, and at the people asking them to stop. Some fist fights occurred, and the projection was cut short when about 80 lesbian women decided decided to collectively leave, most of them scared and in tears. The organisers did try to intervene by calling the police on these women when they refused to stop complaining about what had just happened. As a queer man myself, I always saw the cinema as a refuge from the outside world, a place where I could watch others express my emotions better than I possibly could. I don't want to be scared to go to the movies. I don't want to have to ask people to stop being disrespectful. I don't want my rare hours of leisure to become the equivalent of a Twitter feed full of homophobic slurs passing off as jokes. I don't want people to start a fisticuffs tournament midway through a work of art. I'm not even sure I'd feel safe enough to go and watch that film in the cinema if it was shown in Belgium. So, I mean, I think that's I think that's a one-off. I haven't read any other stories of the film causing that kind of objectionable behaviour. But Peter, appreciate the email.
Yeah, no, that's horrifying, and what an absolutely horrible thing. And I mean, I think in general, people misbehaving in cinemas is terrible. But that sounds like a really, really horrible. And the only thing I would say is, don't be put off. I haven't heard other stories like that. And, so let's hope that is a fairly isolated instance. I want everybody to go and see Love Lies Bleeding and to enjoy it in a cinema, which is really, I mean, it is such a cinematic film. Like we were talking about Powell and Pressburger, it is such a cinematic film. It needs to be seen on a big screen.
Also on that subject, Caroline says, I took myself to my old stomping ground of Warwick Arts Centre this afternoon to see Love Lies Bleeding. I was expecting a lot of glistening muscles and a thriller, but blimey, Charlie, the violence was a bit stronger than anticipated. I came out needing a stiff drink, but I'm not drinking at the moment. So instead, I just wandered around my old campus looking a bit stunned. I mean, looking at Tossall Flats is enough to make you want to have a drink anyway, but still. Hours have passed since then, and I still couldn't tell you whether I enjoyed the film or not. Fantastic performances, certainly, and really good to see a lesbian romance not shot for men, but I think I might be just a tad too soft for this one. Caroline, thank you very much.
It's definitely kind of muscular and and aggressive. But I'd like to say that I do think that thing about not knowing whether you liked a film or not actually is one of the most brilliant responses. As I believe I once said in a book that I wrote, you can probably buy in a bookshop, that there are films that you can love and films that you can hate, but the best films are the films that you can love and hate at the same time.
So let's race through these up to number 1. Civil War is at number 7.
Well, I think you and I are both in agreement that it is definitely very, very powerful for, whatever shortcomings it may have. It's a powerful cinema experience.
Tarot is at number 6.
Wasn't press screened, supernatural horror film. The only review I've seen is from the Grawny ad, which said, flashes of competence are not enough to distract from a sense of crushing pointlessness. So maybe that's why they didn't show it to us.
That's very good. Kung Fu Panda is at number 5.
And then now we're going to get Kung Fu Panda 4 at 5, and soon we're going to have Kung Fu Panda 5 at 4. It's just unstoppable.
Back to Black is at number 4.
Which has done pretty decently considering the amount of negative press it faced. I think it is, it's a 3 out of 5 pop biopic, and I think it has a very strong central performance. I know it's a fairy tale, but no one doing pop biopics is asking for documentary realism.
Josh O'Connor, our star in just a moment, is one of the stars of Challengers, which is at number 3.
If you thought tennis was not sexy, see Challengers. Honestly, I was just talking to one of my children yesterday. He went to see it, and I said, Overcooked. And they went, yeah. But honestly, that final tennis showdown is like Overcooked, but wow. And it's like, yeah, it is kind of breathless, and it's my favourite Luca Guadagnino film.
UK number 2, and it's the same in the States, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So
hasn't got any better.
It's doing okay. So the UK top 3 and the US top 3 is the same, because the number 1 movie is The Fall Guy. Let me give you a couple of emails, Mark, and then you can.
Okay.
Then you can.
Yeah.
So I can't remember another example of on the one hand and on the other. So First of all, Feichnen says, The Fall Guy is so bad I wanted to leave after 20 minutes, something I haven't done since Highlander 3, The Final Dimension in the 1990s, and I've seen some terrible dreck in the intervening 30 or so years. I cannot begin to understand how a film so lacking in every department has escaped into the wild. The dialogue is utterly facile and witless, and yet this banter drones on interminably in almost every scene that requires people to talk to each other. The stunts are utterly uninspired. Worse still, they are photographed with not a single iota of visual flourish. The chemistry between Gosling and Blunt is non-existent. That the best scene between them is when they're on mobile phones makes it feel like they were so repulsed by each other they couldn't bear each other's company any longer, and so on. Then, on the other hand, Michael. I just returned from my local World of Cine, wanted to share my thoughts on The Fall Guy. Going in, I knew it very little beyond what the trailer seemed to suggest was a bit of knockabout fun with some famous faces. What I got was so much more, and perhaps the most fun I've had in a cinema for a long, long time. This is a film that feels simultaneously new, fresh and distinctive, but also delightfully retro in its embrace of physical stunts, handsome leads and lots of explosions. The fizzing pace is unrelenting, the jokes are genuinely funny and sprinkled liberally, and the use of music is excellent. I'm thoroughly enjoying Ryan Gosling's reinvention as a genuinely excellent comedy actor, and his chemistry with Emily Blunt is the beating heart of this film. I also can't help but feel this is a rare example of everyone involved having a great time, which then does translate to the audience. To finish, I think the film's greatest achievement is how it manages to be several different films at once, equal parts comedy, romance and action, without any one part neglected or overindulged. So you're either with Feignan or you're with Michael.
Well, I think of those two emails pretty much sum up my experience of seeing the film. I saw it and I thought it was a really entertaining popcorn movie, and I loved the chemistry between the two leads. As I walked out, I met a critic who said to me, "Wasn't that awful?" And I said, "No, I didn't think so." And they were very surprised. Now, the interesting thing is that although this is number one, apparently it is a soft number one. The Variety article after the opening weekend says, Fall Guy kicked off the summer movie season without much sizzle. So what they think is that it's underperformed, and one of the reasons people are saying is maybe because they thought that, Fall Guy was a familiar IP, and perhaps it isn't. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I think it is a really good popcorn movie. I don't think it's anything more than that. I don't think it has any depth, but I definitely enjoyed watching it. I saw it on an IMAX screen in which the stunts looked pretty damn good to me. But as I said, I came out and a fellow critic said to me, and also another critic over whom I'm a great fan, really didn't like it. So it is proving divisive. I'm kind of confused because I just thought it was a bucket of popcorn. That's what it is.
I love the fact that you can be number one. Hey, we're number one. Yeah, but it's a soft number one.
I know. But you understand how the pop charts work.
I mean, a soft number two is something else. But anyway,
yeah. For heaven's sake. And there we are. So this early in the show, we're into trying hard. Regular listeners will be pleased.